It's Thursday again, tell everybody to lock in, grab some popcorn, a drink, and go and throw your AirPods in. It's a 1-hour show, constantly speaking facts. Bulletproof stats are always shooting from Matt. And when it comes to Kyle, you getting numbers and style. Jake is gonna educate you, he has that knowledge on file. Player, step your game up, don't be sluggish or lazy. Or Jimmy J might hit you with a shaky baby. Catch him on YouTube or any podcast platform. Breaking all the news down like Shaq does the backboards. No hot takes, this is where the hottest debate's at. Now kick your feet up, cause it's time for straight facts.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another edition of Straight Facts. I'm Jake Galley, no James Jackson today, but I got my guy Stat Matt Robinson alongside me. And as always, we are presented by the Up On Game Network. Put together, I don't know if you saw, Matt, they put together an awesome reel. We were included that went up on Instagram. It displays all of the great shows on the network. Go check that network out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, on Twitter. You can follow them anywhere that you get your podcasts. Go check them out. But Matt, we have to get to the NFL. We neglected them last week, but we're coming to the end of the year. It's crazy how quickly it flies by, and a lot is happening. A lot has already happened. So I thought this would be a good time to look at the playoff purview, so to speak. And you went ahead and pulled some stats for all of the division races, some wild card as well. Before we get into that, which loss from last week do you think is worse to endure as a fan? The Colts losing to the Vikings in the biggest comeback of all time, or the New England Patriots quite literally handing the game to the other team? Which one as a fan?
Pat's loss is worse because you're in a playoff hunt. But I think that context. If they were both in the same playoff hunt, I think the Colts loss is worse. But we know the Colts stink. The Patriots losing on an idiotic play to a below average team when you're in a wild card race is just, it's great to see after they've been spoiled for 22 years. So yeah, you're a 500 football team now. Weird, horrible things are going to happen like this.
Weird and unusual punishment will be dealt out to your fan.
We had Ronnie Brown throw the ball backwards.
Directly behind you. Yep. It happens. It does. And you know what? It seems to happen somewhat frequently, actually, to the Patriots, even given all their success. I saw a stat that the only other time that a game has ended on a game-winning touchdown after multiple laterals was when Miami beat them on a miracle play. I don't know if you remember Gronkowski out there trying to run a guy down. So the Patriots not immune to the WTF moments, but looking ahead now to the people who deserve to be talked about for their good football play as opposed to the bad football play. The division winners. And Matt, if you want to walk us through basically how these all break down.
Yeah, so there's 5 divisions that are, I consider them decided at this point. 3 are officially clinched. That's the Vikings, Niners, and Chiefs. And the Eagles and Bills both have a 99% chance of, roughly 99. Eagles are like 98.9. Bills are like 99.3 of winning their divisions. They'd have to win. They'd have to lose out while the Cowboys won out or the Dolphins won out in the Bills' case. And that's very unlikely. That's like a 1% chance. So I think there's 5 races that are decided, and there's 3 that are up for grabs. I'll actually start with the good division first, which is AFC North, where the Bengals are 10-4, are a game up on Baltimore, who's 9-5. Then there's 2 underperforming divisions where the below average, Titans, they're 7-7, are only a game up on the Jaguars, and the NFC South, the worst of the worst, the 6-8 Bucs are a game up on everyone in that division, at 5-9.
All right, so let's go back and start with the NFC South, because James proclaimed at the beginning of the year the Bucs are the best team in the NFC. The Bucs are going back to the Super Bowl. I think he may have had the Buccaneers going back to the Super Bowl. And jokes aside, they still, as you mentioned, somehow have a 1-game lead. So walking through their remaining schedule with Tampa Bay, at Arizona, at home against Carolina, at Atlanta to close the year. I think those are 3 wins. Do you think those
Carolina's not guaranteed. Carolina's played decent recently, 4-5, but for that division, that's above average. Since getting rid of your guy Matt Rule, they've been like competitive. A tough loss to if they beat Pittsburgh last week, which they probably should have, although they're like the same record, it would be like, oh, Bucs are really in trouble, because it would mean if the Panthers win that week 17 game, they basically win the division because they'd hold the tiebreaker for sweeping them. But as it stands now, the Panthers are probably going to lose to Detroit. I'm just going to say that. And then if they'd have to beat Tampa and New Orleans, and it's unlikely. And like there's scenarios where other teams can do it too, like Atlanta, but they have a horrible division record. And the Saints have to play the Eagles, and the Eagles, if the Eagles have clinched everything, there's a chance the Saints win. But the Eagles want the Saints to lose that game.
They will play that game hard. Yeah. They should look. If Howie Roseman decided to sit Hurts, put in Sudfeld against the what was it, the Redskins at the time, or the Washington football team, then he is 100% going to make sure that they play through against the Saints. And you know what? It could really end up making a difference. I think the Saints pick is 9.
Well, if they win the division, they automatically jump to 18 or 18. Yeah,
exactly.
Which is
So you know what? I'm going to count the Saints out because I haven't looked at the rest of you could tack that one on as a loss. Mm-hmm. I mean, you never know what happened. They're a feisty team. You never.
And then they got swept by the Bucs. So if they lose a game, then they're done.
Right. So you could pretty much write them out, which is great for Eagles fans. But getting back to the NFC South, so like if we think it's between the Panthers and the Buccaneers, then I think and they're going to play each other head to head. I think it ultimately does, and which is great. I think both sides would prefer this. It comes down to who's the better team. The fact that you have to give any pause after asking that question is shocking. I think the answer is still Tampa Bay. I'm pretty confident that answer is still Tampa Bay. And given their soft schedule, look, if Tom Brady loses to Carolina, the division to Carolina, I would say it might be time to hang it up. But in your opinion, who is the better team and who do you think is coming out with it?
The fact that Carolina has to win out, or Tampa, Arizona is so bad. And so it's the fact that they might, if they lose to Detroit, that means Tampa has to lose to either Atlanta or Arizona. So I just think it just doesn't work out. Even if Carolina wins, I think the Bucs are lucky enough to be in this pitiful of a division. It's weird though. Like the Tampa Bay Bucs have a worse record than the Detroit Lions. Imagine saying that before the season.
Yeah, it's wild. And, Brady, almost like a migrant bird, it starts to get tough up there in the Northeast, and he migrates south for a season or two, and then comes back up north when the weather's warmer up in New England.
Oh, and my take, Brady is absolutely hanging it up after this year. He signed a ball that someone intercepted off him in an embarrassing 35-7 loss. Tom Brady of last year doesn't do that. He says, "Get away from me." No. And he's not, after getting embarrassed 35-7 against Brock Purdy, and some guy gets an interception off you and you sign the ball post game, you're ready to hang it up.
Interesting. That's a good takeaway, Matt. I'll stash that one in the back of my head, because honestly, some people are saying, and we don't have to go into this, move on after this, but the FTX involvement is maybe a financial driver for him to continue to play. Now, that being said, he can have a financial driver from being a broadcaster as well. Mm-hmm. So doesn't mean he's still going to play. But I digress. We'll move along to probably the heir apparent, or one of the heir apparents, to take over Brady's throne as the greatest quarterback in recent memory, that being Joe Burrow, that being the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that we have written. We didn't write them off, but there definitely was an episode or two where we
declared them like Super Bowl hangover victims, and they were, and then they found the cure real quick. So.
Yeah, and that cure was getting the offense going, which they eventually did, and they did it without Jamar Chase. Now that he's back, profiting off of it. 1 game lead over Baltimore, as you mentioned. Baltimore sliding without Lamar. I had Mark Andrews and Lamar were my big stack in fantasy. So I was extra aware to how just like it's really like watching a D1 team versus like a D1 offense, or excuse me, a D1 defense versus like a what is it? FBS type opponent.
Like honestly, this is a great, like, not for the award, but for the meaning of like MVP for Lamar. Like he is that entire offense. And like you have a game where you're going like back and forth with Tua early. Imagine like they lose that game like 45-3 with Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, it's scary. And they did make the big move to bring in Roquan Smith onto the defense, but yeah, they on all facets, especially even with Lamar, and this is what we can get to, because Lamar will be, I believe, returning either next week.
There's a chance he comes this week, but yeah, I don't know how likely.
Right. I would imagine, I don't know if they're still in the hunt that they're going to be pushing Lamar back. Granted, a game back. I mean, they've been in this position. It's an experienced coaching staff. He's been in this position before, so we'll see how they play it. But I guess the question is, with the Bengals holding the 1 game lead, they're at New England, they have Buffalo, and then they play Baltimore. NFL schedule makers are really next level. They play Baltimore. These two teams play each other.
They started that on purpose, like around 2010, where they made it like by rule, the last game of the season is now a division game.
Right. It's a good, very highly ups your chances of the game mattering in some regard, for sure.
And they knew probably Browns-Steelers was not going to be as important because the looming suspension for Watson, and the Steelers were full rebuild. And Bengals Super Bowl team and the Ravens were 8-3 before Lamar got hurt last year.
Yeah, and just breaking down those schedule again, Cincy at New England, Buffalo, then Baltimore. Compared to Baltimore, has Atlanta and Pittsburgh at home, and then obviously goes to Cincinnati to end the year. But I think heading into that week, we may be all locked up in the AFC North. I think Baltimore probably goes 2-0 since he goes 1-1.
Well, then it's a tie. They have a tie record at that point. Then the game is for the division.
Right, that's what I was saying.
But that Buffalo game actually might not matter. Maybe for seeding, it might. Yeah, for seeding,
depending on tiebreakers.
Right. But just compared for Baltimore, like if they're a game up on Baltimore, or if they're tied with Baltimore record, if Baltimore beats them, they overtake them.
Right. So Baltimore controlling their own destiny.
I don't think Joe Burrow loses at home with a division on the line. The good news is that the consolation prize isn't that bad, because it means you're most likely going to play the AFC South champ, who's bad. And like right now, the Bengals are slotted to play the Chargers, who are really hot. And like I'd rather play Tennessee or even Jacksonville if like then. So it's not the end of the world if you don't win the division. But you definitely want that home playoff game.
It's really interesting because I think in NBA, this is a big thing, right? You see the jostling of, we don't really care where we finish. Let's just jostle for position on who we want to play. Do you think that goes on in the NFL?
No. People want the home playoff games because it's not a series. Right. And the fact that Cincy is 1 game back of Kansas City for the 2 seed, and they have the tiebreaker because they beat them. So if Kansas City slips up, then they could overtake Kansas City for that 2 seed, and they still have a shot at the 1 seed if they beat Buffalo. Yeah, they could beat that. That's what the Buffalo game matters for. They could get the 1 seed.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue with doing this right now is there's so many. There's still, even with 3 games left, and you think like, like we don't want it to come up on us and have us not have formulated opinions yet, which is why we talk about it. But in reality, there is a lot of ways that this could kind of bounce and take turns. I think when you look at Cincy, they have a top 5 team in terms of points for, top 10 in yards for. And then their defense has kind of walked the walk this year. And that was a big reason as to why they went on such a big run. But 10th in points against for the defense, 10th in turnovers. I mean, they're a team that can cause some problems. And I don't know if that was something that we really had tabbed them as, especially when they were shaky.
Well, their defense won the narrative of the AFC title game is Joe Burrow leads the comeback, but the story of the AFC title game was the Bengals defense just swarming the Chiefs offense the entire second half. Not that Burrow didn't do a really good job, but like the Bengals defense really showed up in the playoffs, and they've showed up for almost the entirety of this whole year.
Yeah, forcing 4 turnovers in that game last week against Tampa Bay. They've shown out. Look, there's no reason that, and this is shocking to say, I think this is like a sneaky team, but like there's no reason that we can't look up and AFC title game, we're coming in and the Bengals are on another big time run and they're really hot.
The AFC and NFC are so different for me. I could talk myself into easily 5 teams. If you told me they're going to be in the Super Bowl, I won't be surprised. If there's a chance I could get convinced into 6, and the 6th one's Miami. With the NFC, it's like, I guess it's the Eagles, Cowboys, and maybe San Fran, and like I still don't. The Vikings still stink. Vikings will win the Super Bowl, and I'll say they stink. So, like they're not good. Like the AFC has so many teams. They're just like, if the Eagles or Dallas like don't win the NFC, I'll be very surprised. If it's not Kansas City or Buffalo, I won't be or Cincy. They're still like, oh, Baltimore could. Right. Like the Chargers have a shot and stuff with them.
Baltimore
later.
Could what? Win the Super Bowl?
Make the Super Bowl.
Oh, I don't know, man. They're going to come up against some teams that they're going to have to.
Their offense has been so bad, and their defense is keeping them in these games. They're only allowing 13.3 points per game over the last 6 games, and they're like 4-2. It's brutal for them.
Yeah, I just don't know if they're moving the ball. Like, hey, move the ball on Buffalo.
No, but things click with if Lamar's back and the offense clicks, they could be in the Super Bowl. That wouldn't.
Oh yeah, they have top end potential.
Like I can't say that about any non-Eagles or Cowboys team in the NFC.
Right. Okay, so we'll close out the divisional talk here with one team that you did not mention in terms of a division where teams weren't mentioned, and that being the AFC South. Still have to talk about them though. Still a division.
Titans are choking away. They were 7-3, and now they're 7-7, and now the Jaguars are in their rearview mirror. And God, I really want Jacksonville to take this division.
Everyone does, right?
Like everyone knows the story with Tennessee. They're pretty good. They have Derrick Henry. Jaguars are so much more fun with Dougie P and Trevor Lawrence really coming into his own. I'm glad to have a Clemson quarterback I could be proud of in the NFL again. It's that game against Dallas, the comeback, and just when Lawrence fumbles, you think it's over, and then they get the ball back, and he still gets him in the field goal range. That's just great resilience, and that basically embodies their team. If Jacksonville can beat the Jets, I think they're gonna win the division. I'm just gonna say it. They're gonna win the division.
And so you alluded to they're at the Jets.
Tennessee's gonna lose to Dallas. And the Jacksonville could lose to the Jets, and I still think Tennessee loses to Dallas probably. And then it's still 1 game difference, and Jacksonville would beat them, and they would get they'd win the division at 8-9 because they would have swept them.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think literally every unbiased in terms of like, I'm not a Tennessee fan or I'm not, AFC South fandom. Every other NFL fan wants to see Trevor Lawrence and Dougie P in the playoffs, like every other fan. Quick aside, another reason why I'm rooting for the Jaguars. I mean, obviously the Doug Peterson connection. Didn't
you have a bet on them?
I had a Trevor Lawrence MVP bet, but that's beside the point. I didn't have any bet specifically on them, but I found in my research, it's always funny the tidbits that you pick up doing sports broadcasting. I was at doing my Penn research one day, and there are 2 Caldwells on the Penn team. They're sisters, Sydney and Sanaya. And, they have like facts about the family, and I'm reading through. Father, Mike Caldwell, defensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars. What? So anyways, I'm a big Jags fan in the AFC now, but you make a really good point. And I think last week's game against Dallas really epitomizes kind of why this team is that darling, that team that everyone wants to see succeed. They put up 40 points, over 500 yards. Exciting offense, exciting big. Everyone, aside from maybe some people who went up against him in the ACC, I think everyone also wants to see Trevor Lawrence succeed as a face. We've had Joe Burrow, who's succeeded as a top pick. Trevor Lawrence, I think a lot of media sources would like that to happen. So,
and Tennessee, they're boring because it's just Derrick Henry, and the spell is kind of gone away. It was actually incredible. I was just looking this up today when I was doing the research. They're in Derrick Henry's career, if you include the playoffs, they're 29-3. This is as of a month ago or a month and a half ago. They're 29-3 when he has 100 plus yards until their last 3 games where he had 100 plus yards, where they've lost all 3. So it's just their formula isn't working anymore. And I don't need to see them play Cincy or Baltimore. I've seen that Tennessee-Baltimore game so many times. And I know like Tennessee had the upset over them a couple years ago, but then like Baltimore got them back. Like I'm sick of Tennessee in the playoffs. They're just boring.
It's like, so if I were to imagine the 2021 Titans offense, I would describe it like a flip, like a switch, right? On, off. It's either Derrick Henry, oh, we can't go there. Counter. AJ Brown, right? You just go back and forth, hitting it on and off. Whereas like a team like the Niners or a team like, who's another really good offense, like the Eagles, they get to their looks. And it's like, like the neural pathways of a brain that offense would look like compared to the switch of.
It could be a Miles Sanders day. It could be a Hurts rushing day.
There's a million ways.
Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard when he's healthy.
A million. And you said the teams that are predicated on conserving, almost conservative offense, Eagles, Niners, they run the ball a ton. They don't take a ton of big chances. And they're tricky in the way that they get to their looks. And they also have dominant defenses, or at least in the Eagles' case, a good enough defense. I think Eagles are, I don't know if you would call them dominant, but I digress. I think this is a division that, again, we both agree on. We think that the Jaguars are probably going to take it. We want the Jaguars to take it. And given all of the, I guess, tanking that is going to go on with probably after, the even you're leaving sort of thing, once it becomes apparent, I think we might see Tennessee really pull the bottom out on and try and get some draft positioning. But we'll move on now to the wild card. And we can just kind of, again, this is a million different scenarios depending on who wins, who loses, etc. But we just wanted to take this chance to give you a look at the field and what we're dealing with. So starting with the NFC, found it funny, Matt. After being one of the worst divisions for a long, long time, and really I say that it's probably been like 3 years.
No, people overstated that. Like, we had the year where Washington won it at 7-9, and the year where it was a really bad division, we went 9-7 and won it, and the Cowboys were 8-8. But like, they're like when the Texans with Brian Hoyer went 9-7 and won the division, no one was like, "Oh, what a disaster that AFC South is." Like, the NFC East, it's because they get on primetime all the time, and non-NFC East fans get annoyed when they have to watch bad football, understandably. But the NFC East has had a lot of times where they were good. Last year, we had a wild card. We were the wild card team. The Eagles were the wild card. If you have a division where your second place makes the playoffs, you're not that bad of a division.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes into the parity of the conference as well. But so as you mentioned, currently 3 wild card spots are all NFC East teams. Dallas with a couple games up on the Giants and the Commanders.
The Cowboys clinched the playoffs. So.
Right. So they're locked in, actually. That's a great point. But what I found funny was that, ironically, the game that these two teams tied each other, now they find each other both in the wild card race. And ironically, this actually gives them like a tactical advantage. Obviously, a tie is better than a loss. So now all the teams under them, and the ones that are really within proximity being Detroit, Seattle, and then Green Bay is 2 games back. But with Rodgers, we don't count him out. Those teams have to end a game above them. So this is going to take basically Washington losing at least 2 games, and then the other teams. They have to win.
If Detroit wins out and Washington loses 1, Washington finishes 9-7-1. Detroit finishes 10-7. They get the playoff spot.
Right. So then the scenario for them is what? Washington.
Well, they have to right now. It's essentially Washington. The way I view ties is you're the worst. I count the tie as a loss, but you have the tiebreaker over every other team with that like fake record. So if you call the Washington's record 7-7 instead of 7-6-1, but they have the tiebreaker no matter what over every other 7-7 team, that's the easiest way to kind of like break it down.
The way I view it is the win column just cannot be tied in any way, right? And as you laid it out, but basically the win, you have to have one more in the win column than they do.
Like the Eagles in 2008, I remember they went 9-6-1, and if they didn't get the tie, they would have lost the tiebreaker at 9-7. So they're basically like a 9-7 team, but they win the tiebreaker because like whatever. So ties are legit. They're half wins, half losses in the standings. So the fact that Washington has to play Dallas, but that Dallas game might not mean a lot because they're probably going to be locked into that 5 seed no matter what. And the Giants have to play the Eagles, and that game might not mean anything, is what's the worst news for Seattle and Detroit.
Right.
And I really think it's worse for Detroit because Seattle's kind of fallen off, and I think Detroit's kind of on the rise. They just kind of – Dallas losing to the Jaguars really hurt the chances for the for Washington for Seattle and Detroit, because the Eagles would have something if the Cowboys beat the Eagles on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, then the Eagles had to win the last 2 games to win the division, and the Cowboys would have to keep trying to win to push them. Right. It's like I said, the division's essentially done unless an epic collapse happens, and they're probably going to be wistfully rooting for Gardner Minshew throwing to like wide receiver 1 Quez Watkins, and like you gotta have these, and it's not at the end of the world, but
right.
I think a tough break.
The Eagles' second string is like equivalent to rooting for Houston or someone. Not, but I mean, It is a good point that just simply unless the Eagles want to, and hey, the Eagles have stuck it to their own division before, for just the sake of sticking it to their own division. So I wouldn't put it complete now.
If the Eagles lose the next 2 games, then both Dallas and the Eagles are going to go all out week 18, which is what the teams are rooting for. But I think it's very unlikely that the Eagles lose to the Saints.
Yes, as do I. So we'll move on. We think that it'll be an all NFC East sweep there, right?
I just want to say one thing. The Washington loss confirmed another year of the longest streak in the NFL. The Washington football franchise has not had an 11-win season since 1991. It's the longest streak in the NFL. Every other team,
RG3 teams, 10-win teams,
10-win teams.
Man, yeah. I mean, seeding really is so much in the NFL, especially like the bye. I think it's going to play out empirically over time that like
Baker Mayfield's Cleveland got 11 wins, and
yeah, Washington, but it's a tough division. As we said, it's a really tough division. I mean, it's a competitive, not a tough always, but a very competitive division.
31 straight seasons, though.
Yes, right. It's well, you know what? Hey, if you told me the stat, if you told me the stat and said guess which franchise it would be, they're one of like the top 5 I would pick because of the ineptitude.
It'd be like Detroit and
Cleveland. I probably would have guessed Cleveland, to be honest with you. Maybe I would have been smart enough to actually think about it, but just guessing blind, they're one that I would put on there. So we'll move on to the AFC, where it's, again, a lot of the same. Some teams that are and this one, honestly, it's a little bit different in the sense that I think the door's way more wide open for the wild card spots here than what we just laid out. So currently, Baltimore is 2 games up, and then you have the Chargers and the Dolphins bringing up the tail. They're both 1 game up on the next closest competitor. And those viers for that spot being the Patriots 1 game back, Jets 1 game back. And then obviously you have Jacksonville in here, which could change due to division. As we laid out, we think they might get in. You have the Las Vegas Raiders 2 games back. Cleveland's 2 games back. These teams are all 6-8. And Pittsburgh, the last 6-8 team, 2 games back of the wild card. I mean, they're basic. Really, anyone with 2 games back is probably dead. But
I don't see any. I don't think the Chargers or the Dolphins are bad enough to collapse that much.
Right. Neither do I.
Cleveland or Pittsburgh gets in. In my mind, the teams with a realistic shot end with the Jets and the Patriots.
All right, so then let's talk about those 2 teams. Both in the same division. The Patriots is
going to come down. I really think it's just going to come down to they play the Dolphins the second to last game of the season, and they're going to have to beat them, and I don't think they will. And Mac Jones has been such a bad quarterback. How do you 7 touchdowns, 8 interceptions? It's a 1978 season. It's just it couldn't happen to a more spoiled franchise. That poor quarterback play is probably going to cost them the playoffs, but it's wild that the game is home. If it's snowy, maybe that bothers Miami. They put up a great fight against Buffalo. I know Miami's on a 3-game losing streak, but their 3-game losing streak is close loss, and then a bad game against San Fran.
Let me ask you a question.
The Chargers.
Right now, I'm trying to route to it, and I think the answer is yes. Who calls plays on offense? Is it Matt Patricia who calls plays on offense for that team?
The Patriots, yes.
Okay. Full stop. Full stop. That is your problem. Mac Jones might be part of the problem. That is your problem.
Yeah, New England says Buffalo after that, too. They're not making the playoffs.
Right. I would love...
Bengals, Dolphins, Bills. No, they're done. That Raiders loss was really horrible.
It's like a backbreaker, and honestly, it's not. You can't. I know. I was just digging into Patricia. You can't blame that loss on him.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm changing it now. The Jets are the team that has a shot. Only the Jets. They have the Jaguars, the Seahawks, and then the Dolphins. They'll have to beat the Dolphins, which is possible. That game will be in Miami for potentially the last wildcard spot. I'm putting the Chargers ahead of Miami. One, because they have the tiebreaker, and two, I favor the team that's on the hot streak when they're the same record in a playoff race. So I really think it's just going to come. That's going to be fun. Week 18. I'm going to write it down right now. It's going to come down to Dolphins, Jets, and the Dolphins will win.
You know, if there's a scenario where the Chargers are left out of the playoffs and the Jets make it to the playoffs, our buddy James Jackson is going to be insufferable on this pot. He is going to be at the peak of his powers if that plays out.
The Chargers play the Colts, Rams, Broncos. They're going to finish 11-6.
Yeah.
They're going to be fighting. They're going to be fighting the Bengals or Ravens for that second wild card, or that first wild card.
Yeah.
To play the AFC South team.
Finally winning the close games. They have won 3 out of their last 4, all of them being 1-score games. So maybe a good omen for the Chargers franchise. We will move on, though, because this is the episode right before Christmas hits. It's currently Hanukkah, tail end of Hanukkah. So holiday season for everyone. Would like to take this time to say, and I'll probably say it at the end too, but happy holidays to you and yours, whatever you will be celebrating. But regardless of what you celebrate, if you are a basketball fan, Christmas is a tentpole day for you because you probably definitely have off from work. And if you live in America, and you also are going to have access to a full slate of televised NBA national TV games, which is always great. I said that we had to come up with a title for the segment here, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I said last week. I
like it a lot.
Okay, I'm glad that you get it. What we have here, folks, is present or presents. And the premise is, which games are you going to be with your family? Yeah, I can turn my back to that one. I can focus in on family. I can open up the presents. I can interact with cousins. And which one are you going to be present for? Which one are you going to be tuned in? I'm watching this game. I don't really want to deal with family. We'll go through the full slate, 5 games starting at noon. Hallelujah. Thank goodness at long last, after 2 years at 12 p.m., our 76ers will take center stage against the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. These two teams last played, I believe it was the 2017-18 year. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid took that one home, 105-98. Surprisingly good Knicks team. I was shocked in pulling these stats together. Sixers are 17-12. Knicks are 18-3. I mean, for how much Knicks fans complain.
18-13.
18-13. Correct. Left out the one. For how much Knicks fans complain about their team, you would think they're a lot worse. With you search Julius Randle on any given night and see what those tweets say about him.
Well, it's just they're on an 8-game win streak. They're 10-13 and mad, and then over the past 2 weeks they've won 8 games. So this noon, I'm just gonna be honest, it's a rough time slot for me, just for the way my family does it. So we usually don't start opening presents till probably around like 11:30 if we're lucky. Because my parents always procrastinate and wrap everything the night before and go to bed at like 4 a.m. As a kid, that was horrible because I'd want to wake up at like 8 and they were able to push it to like 9 or 10. But now, like, I'm an adult, I don't really care. But it's still like 11:30. And so by the time presents are done, and sometimes we wait for my grandpa to come before we start too. So if presents are done, and like just the talk afterward, we'll probably have the game on in the background for like the fourth quarter. But there's no way I'm seeing any of the first half.
So you're hemmed in here to presents.
Presents,
You're going to be,
yeah.
it's straight up, and it's actually literally presents. I was saying presents as a, euphemism for not paying attention to the game. That is that's tough because, okay, so like obviously growing up, Jewish family, being raised Jewish, we did towards the later years after I was bar mitzvahed, we started to do more Christmas Day things that are pretty traditionally, Christmas. What I'll say though is we get those knocked, 9 a.m., 8 a.m., because my father is usually interested in whatever football or basketball game is on. And it's also less of like a big family thing. So a lot of these, I'm going to really have the option to be present or just to mess around and do whatever. So I'm going to say, obviously, I'm going to be present. We will be at Sarah's family's house this year. So I am going to be probably in a hurt locker there. I don't have any say. At my house, I can be disgruntled and put it on and do whatever. I'm going to be at her relatives. Luckily, this is early enough. We're going there at 4, so it's more of like a big extended family thing. I'm thinking that I'll be able to be present. So obviously, no matter what the time slot, Sixers are playing on Christmas. Going to be present, going to be a great game. We can move quickly to the next one, 2:30. And this one, in theory, was a great matchup. You have the Los Angeles Lakers, 13-17, heading to Dallas to take on the Mavericks, 15-16. Obviously, the draw here is LeBron versus Luka. But I don't think I have really any other rooting interest or like large-scale NBA landscape altering interest in this game, right? They're middle of the pack. So I'm going to say I'm going presence here. I can turn this one up. Maybe I'll catch the fourth quarter ahead of the 5 p.m. game. But I'm going to go presence.
So this is the way I'm going to do it. So it's a strategy game. I know 5 o'clock to 7:30. We'll get to that. Is another game, and that's also when dinner's probably going to happen.
Yeah,
Christmas Day dinner, and I want to be in goodwill, so I'm going to be helping cleaning up the presents, debris, all the wrapping paper. So I'm full presence for this game. This is the game I punt on. Be the helpful person around the house. Build up the goodwill for the next game. Yeah. I like Luka LeBron. I'll catch highlights.
I would say I would say a majority of the people. How many percent of people who watch any one of the games? How many of them percentage-wise watch all 5 games? How many percentage-wise watch 4 games, 3, 2, 1? What do you think the breakdown is?
I think people who watch 1 will watch parts of all of the other 4. I think most people watch parts of probably 2 or 3.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I would say those 5. The people who watch all 5 or like all of all 5, I don't know how you could watch 5 basketball games in a row. I love basketball. Don't know how you could do it. They are either under the age of like 21 or 22, or you're Jewish, or you don't celebrate Christmas,
or you're betting way too much,
or you are a degenerate gambler. Those are the 3
Christmas
avatars.
Day, let's see if we can afford that present, Sophie. I put it on a payment plan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, trying to afford all the presents. So, yeah, I think we're both in agreement here. This one's going to be presents for us, but the one after this is in my opinion, like objectively, the best game of the day. You have the 2 best teams in the entire NBA facing off against each other
on a high-profile stage where they'll want to perform too.
Yep, Milwaukee Bucks.
You'll get like a playoff light atmosphere because it's not just a Thursday night TNT game or the Sunday ABC game, or it is, but it's the Christmas game. They're going to be, Giannis wants to go all out. Tatum wants to go all out. Jaylen Brown wants to go all out. This is going to be a fantastic game. You've got to find a way to be present for this any way possible. Get some grief from your family member. If you're going to pick a game to get the grief from, it's this game.
And I think it's easier. Like ultimately when people are conversing and you have a lot of people over and the TV's been on for a few hours, much easier to make that move, right? Maybe there's something that they're watching and everyone's, chatting after dinner. This is something that you can parlay. You really can make the case. Like my dad's a super casual NBA fan. But if I say, hey, the league's best player on the two best teams are playing, that's a good enough reason for us to switch the channel.
So for the Lakers Mavericks game, you put on the A Christmas Story rerun on TNT, and so then we didn't get to see A Christmas Story yet. You got to bank that. Say, get rid of that excuse, so you can put the Bucs Celtics game on.
And remember, 2:30 is really 11:30 a.m. on the West Coast for Lakers fans, so it's kind of similar to that, noon game. By the way, if you think your setup is bad, imagine a Sixers fan on the West Coast or a Knicks fan on the West Coast. You're getting up at 9 a.m. and the first thing going on is basketball. But okay, so we agree. We're present currently for 2 games, you actually are present for 1 game, 1.5 games, we'll call it, out of the 3. I'm present for 2 out of the 3. That'll be a really good one. I hope the Bucs smash the Celtics. Middleton will be in that lineup, unlike the 7-game series in round 2, which saw the Celtics eliminate the Bucs, obviously, on their run to the finals. So we'll move to the 8 p.m. game. Another low-key, this is very spicy of the NBA to do. It's a wholesome holiday. This is meant for, old-time rivalries. We respect each other. They go ahead and throw Golden State Warriors hosting the Memphis Grizzlies for the first time after the very contentious playoff series. We got this at 8 p.m. Again, whole family going to be watching as Draymond Green is Mortal Kombat finishing Ja Morant as he goes to the rack. This is going to be a pretty good blood feud here. And it also features a team like Memphis has been great, tied for the first seed, but the Golden State Warriors are 15-17. Ever since that Jordan Poole punch, things have not been the same. So,
they're just like a different home versus road team is the kind of story. So this game's interesting because there's not going to be a Steph. So you think, you're not going to really be that interested in this game. But if you remember, the year the Warriors were the worst team in the NBA, they played a Christmas Day game because everyone got injured. That was
it was unforeseen.
KD, it was the bubble year, and Draymond really didn't try that entire year. And then Draymond had a great game on Christmas against the Rockets. It was the Harden Westbrook year for the Rockets, and out of nowhere got the Warriors a win when they'd been rough all year. So I'm trying to find the game exactly. So they were 7-24, and they were playing Houston, who was 21-9, and they beat them because Draymond Green really actually tried and had 20 points, 11 rebounds on 8 of 14 shooting. So Draymond likes to show up against people when he knows he has a big stage and wants to prove it to a rival or budgeting rival. I think even without Curry, this is worth it.
I said present. I said present as well. And my main question, because I see it coming, Draymond Green will be the storyline one way or the other. He will. And yeah, maybe he'll go off. And if things go south, I don't know if I would put real money. I would put theoretical money on Draymond Green getting ejected on Christmas, doing something to get himself ejected. Granted, I don't know the raw stats. Probably the betting favorite of any, if you just looked at random NBA games, the betting favorite to get most likely to get ejected. An image flashes of Draymond cursing someone out as he leaves the game while the entire family sits and watches. So this one's present. And honestly, it's a coin flip present if the 10:30 p.m. game is something I'm interested in. Maybe 8 p.m. I'll kick. Let me tell you, Matt, I'm going to be snoring very sound asleep by the second quarter of this game. Mark it down. Phoenix Suns 19-13 against the Denver Nuggets 19-11. Theoretically, a really good game. Phoenix incredibly banged up. It's a little too far out to be able to tell exactly who will and won't be available, but I know that Booker, Ayton, CP3 all missing games recently due to injuries. They're all on the injury report. So if two or all three of them miss it, it's probably not worth watching in general. And before I turn it over to you, this is why it's presence for me. And this is also why Nikola Jokic has 2 MVPs. Because these are exactly the games I'm talking about where the national media, who just spent all day watching basketball, again, no one wants to watch 5 games in a row, is going to go to bed, and they're not going to watch, and what they'll do is click back on, let me see how he did. Oh, Jokic had a triple-double. Ooh, look at this cool. They made a clip of that touch pass he did. And they think he had a great game against Bismack Biyombo and crew when they didn't watch the game at all because it's a West Coast, and they could say, he performed well on Christmas. He shows out on the big stage against a good team. No, I've had enough. I'm not watching. I'm going to be playing with my presence, playing with my Joel Embiid action figure instead of watching this game.
Yeah, really. If this was, I'd actually rather this be. This is a game you fall asleep on the couch on. Yeah. Like I got work the next day. Like I'm going to work the next day. So like I'm not going to stay up to watch battered Suns and Jokic. Like I'll catch some of it. It's just I'll play with presence. That like this is like just pop over, see what the score is, and then it's almost halftime. I'll watch till halftime and go to bed.
Well, and you know what? This was the NBA segment, and that does put a bow on it. But one thing before we head to At the Buzzer is, are there any NFL? There's like 3 NFL games on that day.
None of them are good.
Okay. So, I mean, luckily, I don't think
Miami versus Green Bay, which I guess could be good. Like, that's the best one. But I'm still not that intrigued by it. There's Tampa versus Arizona.
Yeah.
And there is
Broncos-Rams,
which is
And those, in theory, they're like, right, when you set out at the beginning of the season, like Broncos-Rams is a banger. That's a banger. Bucs-Cardinals, banger. There's 2 supposedly good teams. And like, you know, it doesn't come to fruition, but regardless, there will be people who are watching. So whether you're watching NBA, watching NFL, make sure you're enjoying it with your family. But we are going to, with that, move to At the Buzzer. Matt, do you have anything for us?
I just want to say I'm really happy with the gift I got my grandpa for Christmas. So my grandpa is 96 years old. His uncle was a man named Lester Hawes, and you can look this up on Pro Football Reference. He finished second in the NFL in rushing yards for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in 1924, I'm pretty sure. And I got him a Frankfurt Yellow Jackets hat. I found one online. I got him a Frankfurt Yellow, and it came in. It was like from a site I didn't know whether to trust, and it came in, and it looks really nice, and I'm really happy about that.
Dude, we'll talk off camera. I could get you maybe a website to get you a non-authentic version of like a jersey or something. They do have a lot of like sellers online, little shady, but that sounds like a great gift, and I'm sure he's going to enjoy it. That's also an incredible like fun fact to drop amongst sports fans casually. It's a good one.
Great. How many greats is it? Uncle was second in the NFL in rushing yards.
That's a conversation starter. Yeah. When they were talking
about to be a lawyer.
When they're talking about like, you know, who's the best running back of all time, talking about it in a bar, you go ahead and bring that one up. Who's going to have the footage to back it up? But well done by you. I'm getting like little stocking stuffer stuff to finish up my presents. My parents are really tough to buy for. I feel like they just get themselves things that they want, so there's never really an extended list. But being thoughtful, you know, you can find one. So quick story, because I think I mentioned it. I'm not sure if I brought it up. Did I mention last week that I'm in like a simulated fantasy basketball sort of 32 team environment, fake players, computer generated league.
I think you have, yeah.
Okay. So the draft was last night, and I'm thinking I'm going to roll in here. How hard could it be? Let me go through. They must have some sort of draft guide, or, I'll look at the top college prospects in terms they have points per game, their generated college stats, all fake players. The person who invited me to the league is like, hey, you ready for the draft? Did you read through the draft prep that I sent you? I was like, oh, no, that was I went to my personal email, which I don't check. I looked through. It is I'm thinking it's going to be a 1-page thing. It's a 12-page guide on how to draft. Matt, it was the most complicated. You have to cross-reference basically which training camps did these guys go to. It's like the NBA, summer league, they'll go to the different leagues. How did they perform there? How do they perform in college? And then you have scouting points, and you have to go to the scouting tab and then click on their attributes and parse through. Basically, it shows you their potential and what they're at right now. And then you have to parse through 800 lines of these guys. Not 800, that's an overreaction. But it was intense. It was an experience unlike anything I've had before. And you know what? I think I did a really good job. Andres Brown, my 31st overall pick. We finished second, apparently, the team that I took over. So, yeah, everything's going up. He has all pro all across his potential. So he's got good potential. But maybe one of the more bizarre things I've ever found myself doing sports related. So I thought that I would share it with our listeners. Maybe something, honestly, you might enjoy, to be honest, with your analytical mind. But I'll show after we get done here. I'll show you. But that is all the time that we have for this episode. It was a great one. We missed our guy James Jackson, but shout out to the Up on Game Network as always. One more time to LeVar Arrington, TJ Hushmanzada, Plaxico Burris. Those guys kill it with their podcast. Again, go check out Up on Game wherever you find your podcast. Go check out Straight Facts. Subscribe. If you're listening this far into the podcast and you have not subscribed, we have to have a talk. But for Stat Matt Robinson, for James Jackson, who couldn't be with us, I'm Jake Galley. These have been the facts.
Straight up.